struggle is really simple. I was born. I was taught how to behave. I was shown how to accommodate. I resist being humanized into feelings not my own. I will be born. I will not be taught how to behave. I will not make my muscles vestigial. I will not digest myself.
Miguel Algarín did not shy away from confrontation. A poet, scholar, and mentor, Algarín believed that freedom of expression, especially for people of color and the working class, was a necessary tool for social change. He helped popularize spoken word and performance poetry worldwide and dedicated his life to creating space for writers, musicians, artists, and other cultural outsiders to gather, exchange ideas, and build networks of support. Through the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, a performance venue and cultural center he co-founded in New York City, and the Nuyorican literary movement he helped to define, Algarín pushed the boundaries of American identity and its established literary tradition. As one lifelong friend put it, he had a vision of the poetry of the streets being as respected as the poetry of the academy. Algarín was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. But in 1950, when he was 9, his family moved to New York City. Many of Algarín's generation grew up feeling split between their identities as Puerto Ricans and New Yorkers. Those who returned to the island with American accents and cultural customs were mockingly called Nuyorican. Meanwhile, in New York, they faced open racial discrimination. Algarín grew up on New York City's Lower East Side, a neighborhood infamous for its poorly constructed apartment buildings and negligent landlords. Though the neighborhood had long roots for new immigrants from Europe, by the late 1960s it had become a cultural and political hub for Caribbean immigrants, African Americans, LGBTQ+ folks, and artists.
From Delancey to 14th Street, from 3rd Avenue to the FDR Drive, lies the neighborhood known as Loisaida. Tens of languages are spoken on literally every block, and though covered by tar and concrete, the yards of our tenement houses are filled with bushes, flowers, and fruit trees.
It was in this environment that Algarín reclaimed the term Nuyorican and reframed his dual identity as a source of pride. In Algarín's writings, he described Nuyorican as a new language, a fusion of Spanish and English born from the experience of Puerto Ricans on the streets of New York. In this raw, unstandardized, and creative language, Algarín saw not only new verbal possibilities, but also a powerful ability to think and act outside of cultural norms. In its speakers, the Nuyoricans, Algarín saw outlaws who brought about social change by disrupting traditional institutions. Sometimes their disruption took the form of organizing to demand better housing and equal pay. Sometimes it took the form of poetry. By the early 1970s, Algarín was hosting informal events, crowding artists and poets into his apartment's small living room. During one such gathering, Algarín said, "There are too many of us in here. Let's go over to that Irish bar across the street." So they did. And not long after, they remade the space as the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. The cafe was a space for artists of all kinds. The walls were covered in visual art by local artists, and the venue held weekly Latin, jazz, and hip-hop performances. But poetry was the heart and soul of the cafe from the start.
Now we're going to do the regular thing that we do here, and that's poetry. And you got a contract with me, and that is that the poet must be heard.
Called the most integrated place on the planet by beat poet Allen Ginsberg, the cafe hosted a rich diversity of voices. From the Nuyorican poets Miguel Pinheiro, Pedro Pietri, Sandra Maria Esteves, and Lucky Cienfuegos, to Amiri Baraka of the Black Arts Movement, and Black feminist poet and playwright Ntozake Shange. Celebrating marginalized artists and challenging the recognized canon of writers, over the years, Algarin co-edited several anthologies of work by these trailblazing poets, who more often than not broke with literary traditions and spoke to the social and political issues of their times.
It was never going to be easy, so if it is hard, that is what it's going to be. Interlocking, clapping, hand claps. Interlock, give all away. Bobby be calling, reserve. Give all away. Proprietors with the take. Patriotism is no more. Pirates now rule the waves.
For Algarin, a poetry reading was a chance to breathe life into words on paper, infusing them with energies, beats, and rhythms of his community and heritage. In doing so, he invited his neighbors to enjoy what had once been an elite literary form. It was in this same spirit that he helped elevate slam poetry during the 1990s. At the cafe's weekly slams or competitions, spoken word poets turned their poems into full-bodied performances that drew on theater, storytelling, and artistic styles like call and response, rooted in African diasporic tradition. Poets who got their start at the cafe went on to win national competitions and star in the HBO hit series Def Poetry Jam. For over 30 years, Algarin taught creative writing, American literature, and Shakespeare at Rutgers University in New Jersey. He would often bring poets from the Nuyorican and Poetry Slam community into his classes to make connections between the past and present. Algarin created spaces that opened up possibilities in more ways than one. In the 1960s and 70s, New York City was home to a growing LGBTQ+ rights movement, and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe played a part in this cultural shift. Co-producer of the cafe, Lois Griffith, recalled, "In the old cafe on 6th Street, there were men with men and women with women, but it was never an issue. There was an openness, a come-as-you-are mentality." Algarin openly expressed sexual and romantic desire for men and women, and these desires often provided the raw material for his own writing, which included poetry, short stories, and short plays. During the height of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s, Algarin, who himself tested positive for HIV, often made references to the plague that took so many members of his community. There are plagues carried by the air. In those cases, we quarantine the bearer. There are, on the other hand, plagues that can be controlled if we use personal restraint and care, and how we meet to share love with each other. Algarin was fearlessly committed to building a radical community around language. A new day needs a new language, or else the day becomes a repetition of yesterday, Algarin wrote in 1975. Through the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, the popularization of slam poetry, his award-winning writings, and years of teaching, Algarin influenced generations of artists, writers, and thinkers. By disrupting the norms of literature, sexuality, and expression, he moved us all closer to a new day.